In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how to use adjustable zigs. Now, zigs are one of those things that everybody raves about. Everybody has stories of other people catching multiple fish on zigs, but then they don't try them themselves. So that could be down to a number of reasons. A lot of people don't understand exactly how to use them. A lot of people can't be bothered because they think they're a faff, but they're not. So they're actually fairly simple to use, and the adjustables make them even easier. Gone are the days of using 9-10 foot hook lengths or longer and getting tangled in trees and just tangles when you cast and all sorts. The adjustables make it a hell of a lot easier. So like I say, today's video is going to be a complete overview on how to use the adjustables and to make you guys see that they're not as complicated as they perhaps once seemed. So the first thing to look at is exactly what components you need to make the actual adjustable zig setup. And the first thing you're going to want, the main thing, is going to be the adjustable zig kit itself. So this is a quarter one. All sorts of brands do them. You can get them in all different shapes and sizes. These ones I've had probably 3 or 4 years, I imagine now, and I've never had to change them. You don't need to change them unless you break one or snap up. So yeah, once you've got them, you've got them. They are a little bit pricey. I think they're about 10 or 11 quid. They might be more by now, I'm not sure. But like I say, once you've got them, you've got them. So basically you have a little float, which comes in the kit, a little quick change swivel, which pulls into the float, and then a little boom like this. So one end, you've got another quick change swivel, so you can just clip a lead onto it. The other end, you've got a loop. So that's what your main line will go through. And then you've got a little foam bit as well, just to protect your main line. So that is that. You then just need a couple of materials to actually make your hook link. So the hook link I use is the Nash Zig Flow. This is £12, which it seems to be a good all-rounder. It doesn't matter what sort of size fish you're fishing for. £12 is a good all-rounder. If you're generally fishing for smaller fish, you can get a lighter hook link if you want to, or I believe they do heavier as well. So whatever suits your need. But again, you can get all different manufacturers. They all do different floating lines and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, that is the actual hook link that I use. I then use little size 12 floater claws because where I'm at today, they are very small fish. So I don't really need a bigger hook. The nice thing about the size 12s is where they are so small, they're really light, so they're easy to pop up as well. So a pack of them, little anti-tangle sleeve just for the end of the rig itself. And then the PVA foam is imperative, so it makes things a lot easier when it comes to casting, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. But yeah, a decent amount of PVA foam. You can get this pretty much dirt cheap, so it's well worth kind of having in your car or your van all the time because it's always very useful. But that is all the bits and pieces that you need to actually set up the adjustable zigs. The next thing is to show you exactly how to do so. Okay, so when it comes to actually setting up the zig, I could have probably done that smoother. It's actually a lot more simple than a lot of you might think. Now, I feel like they've got a bad press for being complicated and all sorts, but they are really easy to use. So we'll just cut this off. Setting up the actual adjustable section, all you've got to do is just take that swivel out. Now, first thing is to slide on the boom. So you've got a little ring at the top just by the foam, and you want to slide that just in place. So once that's on, you can then slide the float on, and that's simply a case of just sliding that straight through. So you've got the little rubber end, which is where your swivel is going to pull into. So you want to slide it on basically narrow end first, or the slimmer end, and then obviously it gets a bit wider. So you slide that down, then it's a case of tying on your swivel. So you just use whatever knot you're comfortable doing. I normally use a Palomar knot. I find these pretty strong and pretty simple to tie. So I just want to tie that on there. Put the swivel back through itself. Just moisten the knot a little bit. And that's that. Cut off the tag end. And then you can just pull the float or the swivel into the float like so. So then basically what you've got is, it is like a running rig. So you've got the boom, which will slide up and down the line, and then you just attach a lead to the boom, which I should have had out ready, but as you all know, I'm not very prepared with anything in life. So let's get the lead on there now. So clip that on there onto the quick change swivel, and then that is the basis of your adjustable zig. So the way it works, that lead will be on the bottom, and then as you let line off, the float will get higher and higher. Again, I'll talk you through this properly in a second, but that's how you set it up. So simply a case of sliding on the boom, sliding on the float, attaching a swivel, and then you're good to go. Now the next part that you want to do is the hook link itself. So this is the part where adjustables make life a hell of a lot easier, because you don't need to be using 7-foot, 10-foot hook links. You can get away with, I'd say, a maximum of 3-foot. I'd probably even use about a 2-foot, but then a lot of the lakes that I fish are a bit shallower. So 2-foot gives you a little bit more scope on shallower lakes to actually raise it up and down. If you've got 3-foot, then if the lake's only 4-foot, you don't have a lot. You can't take it any lower, obviously, than what the hook link originally is. So doing it about 2-foot, it allows me on shallower lakes to still have quite a bit of adjustability. So you want to take a bit of the zig flow line or whatever line that you're using, make up a normal loop in the end for your bait. So you're going to attach the hook with a knotless knot like you would do in most situations. Just tie that up now. You've got a little loop. Again, cut off the tag end. And then get one of the hooks. Now I normally attach this kind of KD style, so then that allows the hook bait to kick away from the hook a little bit. It's all personal preference how you actually make these rigs, because a lot of people will use kickers and things like that, which, to be honest, I don't bother with. It's just another component to add to it, which, yeah, it might give you a slightly better turn in the mouth, but the way they take zigs anyway, it's all very random, so I'm never too fussed on doing that. So I normally do a couple of turns above the actual hair and then 3 or 4 below it, so then that's what's going to allow it to kick out. Then back through the back of the eye, feed that through, pull it tight, and then that is the hook end done. So you've got your little loop where you can attach your bait, and that's kicked away nicely from the hair. Down the other end, you want to just make a loop. Now, I generally make this loop a little bit longer than what I would do if it was a normal bottom bait rig or a standard rig. And the reason for this is, by having a slightly bigger loop, it seems to kick away a little bit more on the cast. So I normally make that a couple of inches. Just trim off the tag end again, and then you can attach your anti-tangle sleeve. And then it's just a case of clipping it onto the float itself. So, like I say, you've got a quick change swivel at that end, click that in place, slide the anti-tangle sleeve down, and then that is your zig, your adjustable zig, all set up, ready to go. The only thing you need to do now is put on the bait. So bait is a whole nother story, and again, it's personal preference. You can use pop-ups, you can use zigs, basically anything that floats, you're good to go. So it's always worth experimenting with different baits. If you use different colors, different flavors, all sorts, because every bait seems to have its day. But a consistent bait seems to be foam, because it's so buoyant, and black foam at that, which is, it seems a bit alien if you haven't fished that way, because why would they take a little bit of black foam with absolutely no flavor? And it works during the night as well, so it does seem a little bit alien, but I think it's almost where it stands out in the day. Particularly, it stands out against the skyline. So if you've got a big bright sky, then obviously if say the fish is looking up towards where the zig is, then it's going to stand out, and it will look like a little bug or something like that, something natural that they have in their habitat anyway. So they just seem to take it. It's really hard to explain until you actually start fishing that way. It's a little bit hard to get your head around, but it does work. And obviously there's numerous accounts, there's been numerous videos on zigs showing that it does work as well. So it's one of those that you really just need to get confidence in and see that it does work. But like I say, if you feel more confident using pop-ups, using high vis, something like that to grab the fish's attention, then that works as well. But like I say, that is ready to go. So I'm going to get a little bit of foam on here myself, and then I will show you how to actually cast these, because there is a bit of a knack to it as well. But again, once you get used to it, you'll see how easy it actually is to get these out and set correctly. So like I say, the next bit is going to be putting just a little hook bait on. And like I said previously, that is completely personal preference, whatever you feel confident in. But I'm just going to snip off a little bit of black foam here and just get this onto the hair. Now I've actually made this hair a little bit longer than what I would normally like, only millimeters too long, but I will yeah, just get this on. The best way to do it really is to cut the foam first, and then you can actually make the hair according to that bit of foam before even putting the hook on. But there you go, that's a little bit of foam, and like I say, if that was, you kind of want a few millimeters off that just so it's a little bit tighter to the hook. But yeah, just to show you guys exactly how to do it, that is roughly how I'd do it. So a little bit of black foam on there, but the main thing here is about actually setting this properly on the float. So on these quarter ones, they've got a little square here, which the best thing to do, if you get a decent sized PVA nugget, you can cut it in half and then stick half of the nugget onto the float. Now once you've got this in place, you can then put the hook in place on that foam, wet the other half, and then stick that together. Now what this does is it will help you avoid tangles. It also drops the hook link to half the length as well, so it makes it even easier to cast. So once it actually hits the water, the foam will then come off the float, and you'll see that the foam will pop up and then the float will pop up. So I'll show you that now. It makes more sense actually seeing it than me trying to explain it. So yeah, this is ready to go. This is how you're going to cast it out. And if I just get the lead, when it actually comes to casting, it will look something like this. The main thing to ensure before you cast is that this loop doesn't end up the lead end up going through the loop, because that obviously will lead to a tangle. But there's an easy way to see if it's tangled or not once you have cast. So I'll show you that now. I'll take this over and go and get this rod out. Right, so when it comes to the casting, like I say, you're all set up once you've got the PVA in place, and it shouldn't in theory tangle when you've got it like that, because you are doubling over the hook link. So like I say, the only way it can tangle is if the lead actually goes through this loop. So it's just a case of trying to keep that as far away from each other as possible, which, to be honest, it does kick away, and that's where the longer tail rubber or anti-tangle sleeve helps out as well. Casting is the same as you'd normally cast, so you just want to ping it out and then ensure that you feather it as it goes down, so then that will drop through. And then, like I said earlier, there is a way that you know that it's not tangled. So if you hold the line or hold the rod so the line's tight, and then you slowly lower it down, you will see the foam pop up and the line will keep pinging out. So you might need to let off a bit more. So the foam's just popped up, and if you let off a little bit more line, then the float will pop up as well. So that tells you that it's not tangled. So what you then want to do is actually tighten right down so you feel the float go against the lead, and then that means that you're right at the bottom. And then it's a case of putting it on the rest, making sure that you are tight to the lead, and then there's a couple of different ways that you can actually set the height of these. So I'm going to show you that now. I'll just move the cameras around. I'll show you exactly how to do that. Okay, so once you're confident that you're not tangled and you've seen the hook bait and foam separate to the float itself, then you need to tighten right down until you basically feel resistance. So if you're pinging that back like so, you'll feel almost like springy, where you're just pinging against the lead. That means that your float is right against the lead. So that means that you're also fishing at 2 foot depth if you've made a 2 foot hook link. Stay with me. Now, all you need to do is, if you want to fish 3 foot off the bottom, let off a foot of line. And what you'll see at the end of the rod tip, the line will go out, and that means that the float is moving up. So once you've let off a foot, you obviously know you're 3 foot off the bottom. And you can continue to do this until you're at the depth that you want to be. So letting off another foot, the line goes out again. Now this isn't a particularly deep lake, the water's really down as well. So I wouldn't want to be fishing too much higher than about 4 foot, because to be fair, it's probably very near the surface now. But another thing that you can do, if you want to, if you let off a bit more line, you can do it the reverse way. If I keep letting it off until the float pops up, I can then bring that back down. I'll see the hook bait disappear, just starting to, and it's just about disappeared now. So I know that that is exactly on the surface. So if you do want to, if there's a lot of fish cruising about, if it's a really hot day, like today is about 30, I think it's about 32 degrees, which generally that means that a lot of fish are going to be right near the surface. So then you can always pinch the line and bring, say, 6 inches back to the reel, and you know you're 6 inches off the top. So it works both ways. I'd say if you want to fish nearer the top, it works better where your hook bait has just disappeared, and then you can bring it back because you know how far under the surface you are. But also it works the other way. If you're tight against the lead and your float is right against the lead, then you can let it off knowing that you're 1 foot up, 2 foot up, 3 foot. So I hope that all makes sense. They are really easy to use. And then once you've actually got it to the desired depth or the length from the top, then it's simply a case of tightening up and putting your bobbin on. Now, the bobbin will make a slight difference. Obviously, if you've got a heavy bobbin, then it will pull the, where it's a running rig, it will pull the rig a little bit towards you, but we're talking inches, maybe a couple of inches back towards you. So it's not going to make a massive difference. And then that way you still get indication. I normally fish fairly tight clutches because zig bites can be a little bit funny. So generally, if you're fishing a tight clutch, a zig bite, the bobbin will hit the top and then it will just kind of hold, or it might just ping around at the top. But they're not, they don't seem to be as savage bites as if you were fishing on the bottom and you've got loose clutches. So that's my preferred way, but it's each to your own. If you want to fish with loose clutches, if you feel a bit safer doing that, then you can do. But I just find it gives a slightly better hook hold because with a zig, you've got a lot of movement, pivots all around the lead, got a lot of movement before you're actually hooking the fish. So if you're using a tight clutch, then as soon as it feels that resistance, in theory, it will pull the hook in a little bit better. But that is basically the concept for setting the depths. And zigs are one of them things that a lot of people might dabble in, but I think if you're going to do it, you need to fish all 3 rods that way, because it makes it a lot easier to find the depth that the fish are actually at. So that one, I've got, say, 1 foot under the surface, and then the other 2 I can have at different depths as well. And then once you start getting a few bites, or a bite or a couple of bites on a single rod at a certain depth, then you know that the fish are at that depth, and you can make the other 2 rods at the same depth as well. Now that was a lot of depth, but I think it makes sense. So it's really a case of playing around until you start getting a bit of activity. Once you've got that activity, then it's a case of swapping all 3 rods onto the same sort of tactics as the rod that's getting the activity, and then it can be really prolific. So it's all well and good close range fishing like this. You can see the hook bait, you can see the float, but if you are fishing a bit further, if you're fishing over about 50 yards, then it's well worth having a pair of binoculars with you, because them hook baits are very small at range. So sometimes it really is beneficial to have a pair of binoculars, and then as you're adjusting the reel, you can keep an eye on them and make sure you can see that the hook bait's just disappearing or it's just popped up, so you know that you're fishing efficiently. So the last thing to really talk about is when it comes to actually playing a fish. And if you've played fish on normal zigs before, you'll know that it can be a right pain, because you've got a lead potentially 6, 10, 15 foot away from where the hook is. So that causes problems in a number of ways. firstly, obviously, if you've got that lead moving about, then that puts a lot of weird angles on the hook. So there's every chance that it can pop out. But also when it comes to netting the fish, that's a long hook link to try and bring back and then net with just a 6-foot handle. So again, that's where the adjustables really come into their own, because if you're using a 2 to 3 inch hook link where it's on a running sort of rig, then you're only 2 to 3 foot away from the lead at any time. So when it comes to netting, it's a lot easier because you've got a different kind of angle to the fish. So you haven't got to worry about like really long hook links or something like that and then trying to stretch out with a net. But also when you're actually playing the fish, you've got less movement from the lead as well. You've still got some, so you've still got to be a bit careful, but I'd say with adjustables, you've probably got a higher chance of landing that fish than you would do if you're using a really long hook link on a standard Zig. It's just things to bear in mind really. So hopefully this video has given you a bit of an insight into adjustable Zigs, how to use them, when to use them. So it'd be good to know what you guys think of this sort of video, if you want to see more how-tos, and if you do, on what sort of subjects. So let us know in the comments below what you want to see them on, and myself, Ian and Curly will try and get out and film a few more. But in the meantime, over here, there should be some videos popping up. So there might be in sessions, product videos. There won't be any how-tos because this is the first one, but in time, there might be some more. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to us, and I'll see you in the next one.